And be aware that items listed under consent agenda are considered routine and will be approved and adopted by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. However, any item may be removed from the consent agenda upon the request of any member of the board and acted upon separately. So at this time, I myself would like to pull 9.12 from the consent agenda and consider it separately. And are there other board members who would choose to pull a consent item? Please let us know. Okay, hearing none, then we will remove 9.12. And I would ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda at this time.
Madam President, I would move the board adopt the consent agenda as amended.
Is there a second? Motion by Mrs. Mayo, second by Mrs. Denler, and the clerk was able to get it, or? Okay. And it was a straightforward motion, so I think we're okay on that one. It's when they get more complicated. Okay, so we will take a vote on that in a moment. Still waiting. Sort of a victim here until he comes up. There we go. So we will vote on the consent agenda now. And motion carries 5-0-0. Next item will be to go to the consent agenda item that I pulled, and Mr. Cody will just be thrilled because he gets to come up for that one. I have a few questions on it. But first, what we would do before you present is I would ask if there's a board member who wanted to make a motion on this item, which is now action item 10.1, the award of lease-leaseback agreement.
Madam President, I move the board adopt the award of lease-leaseback agreement with North State Specialty Contracting for the construction of window replacement at College Park High School.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Mayo, second by Mrs. Denler, and with the clerk, did you get that one? Mrs. Joseph, I don't know. So before, we're not going to a vote, but I just want to make sure you were able to hear that motion.
I just read the title.
Okay. Are we set on that? Okay, thank you. I'm not going to ask you to read it right now. I know I've got you confused here. That's just me. Okay, I have a few questions that I'd like answered, Mr. Cookie, and this is not anything personal. You're a wonderful person. You're a very competent, dedicated person. So this is not about you, because I know now you're getting initiated into taking the full brunt of it. But I did on this lease-leaseback. I know the last time we dealt with lease-leaseback was back in December, when Mr. Peterson was here, and there were some questions in our one of our December meetings around lease-leaseback. And I bring it forward again because I happen to have looked at this project, and I just needed some questions answered around how we got to this lease-leaseback. Right now, in the state of California, I know we have an attorney running up and down the state suing districts right now for lease-leasebacks. I know we have a couple of districts, such as Sweetwater, who really were felonious, it sounds like, possibly. I'm not judging their guilt. But over leasebacks. And my understanding, as I talk with districts, is this is a very controversial topic. So I looked at the specs for this project because I had several questions around it. And when I went back, it looked like a project that was first approved back in March, and it was a bid. When I went back and looked, it looked like bid 1593 for window replacement at College Park High School. And it looked like in March of 2012, what we did was we went out for bid. We were going to bid this out, not do a lease-leaseback. We were going to bid this project out. And if I'm reading the specs right, it looked like we actually did a mandatory walkthrough with some construction companies coming in. And this isn't Trivial Pursuits. I don't know, you're probably far more aware of this than I am, but as I look back through this, so it looked like we did the mandatory walkthroughs, and the companies, a couple of the companies who are in now, who've been invited in to bid, were not participants back in March. I think only one of the companies was participating back in March when it was just open for bids. and participated in the mandatory walkthrough. And then the project, it looked like the bids had to come in by March 28th last year. At which point I thought it was going to bid, and I thought it was an open bid process, and that then the project, as far as I could ascertain, was either supposed to be done by the end of August or October. And it also includes some doors at College Park. There's another piece to it. And so it wasn't just windows, it was also doors. So I started thinking about, my question, bottom line, is how did we go from accepting bids last March with different companies on something that was supposed to close March 28th? Then the project, I guess, never happened, and now we're in a lease-leaseback. So I'm asking, how did we go from open bids and that whole process, which is more of a normal kind of process we've used in the 2 years I've been on the board, to now having it not completed and having it go out and invite bidders in and some different companies? Does this ring a bell, or am I being like trivial pursuits here?
No, it's all ringing a bell. If you go all the way back on 1593, we did award that bid. The board took action on that bid. The
Right.
contractor was unable to come up with a bond for the project. So that particular project was terminated for convenience by the district at that time. Later on in the year, we had some specifications and clarifications. We were going to put this back out. At that time, we were doing lease-leasebacks on all of the items, so it just naturally fell into a lease-leaseback option, which was an allowable option at that time. The contractors that were originally invited on the original bid process were also made aware that the district was going back out on the lease-leaseback, and we invited all of them to provide qualifications and quotes. One of the things that we were doing on the lease-leaseback was obtaining qualifications, and it gives the district an option to review the qualifications prior to looking at proposals. So what that allowed us to do is implement some qualifications to overcome the opportunity of not obtaining a bid bond on this particular project.
Okay, so is the project more than just windows, though? It's doors, isn't it, as well? Or has this changed in this particular?
It's technically windows, but what we have at College Park is what we call window walls. So instead of just a piece of glass, the window actually goes from the top all the way down to the plate. So we're actually replacing almost 10-foot sections rather than just windows. Because of this, in the J building at College Park, your window wall includes the doors. So just on the J building itself, which is kind of a pod building, that includes the door itself. You can't replace the window wall without replacing the door.
Okay, so a couple other questions. When I look over the bids, we have did we have three companies invited in to bid on this project? The three that are listed?
We
Or
had
you
7
had
companies
7?
that we invited to provide qualifications and proposals. We received 3 proposals, which was one of the attachments that we had on there.
Okay, so then, how, just as a question, because when I look at the 3 bids, they're wildly different. So my curiosity is how Tabor, there's one company, Tabor, that's obviously not the recommended bid because it's almost twice as high as, I think it's S&H. No, North State. Is it North State?
Correct.
And then S&H is second. But Tabor comes in way over, I mean, almost twice what the bid you're recommending comes in at. So I'm curious if these bidders, how in the world do they end up twice as much with Tabor? We've given contracts to Tabor. How does Tabor end up twice as much? Are they bidding on the same scope and nature of work?
The scope is the same. I wouldn't guess why Tabor's quote was higher than North State, with the exception is North State is a specialty contractor, so they have a glazing license, which I think would allow them to be a little bit more efficient in this type of project.
And so we picked these 3 and let the other 4 not be part of this matrix that you have? The other 4?
These were the only 3 that
Okay.
submitted qualification
Okay,
packages.
got it. Because I was just a little startled at the discrepancy, how somebody can be